Good afternoon. The North Las Vegas City Council, we welcome you to our City Council meeting, and we have today a Redevelopment Agency meeting. There are 4 public forums set aside for public comment, one at the beginning and end of the Redevelopment Agency meeting, and one at the beginning and end of the City Council meeting. So if you wish to speak, please complete one of the blue cards, which are located on the table outside the main entrance where you came in, or off to my left at the podium rail. If you'll give that blue card to our city clerk, she's sitting right here, thank you, Jackie. And when you are called on to speak, we ask that you limit your comments to more than 3 minutes, avoid repetition. Now let me explain what I just said to you. We start a city council meeting, we say a prayer, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we do a little bit of work, and then we go into a redevelopment agency meeting, which will take about 5 minutes, and then we cancel that, we don't cancel that meeting, we close that meeting, and we come back to our general city council meeting, okay? So there's really nothing you have to do on this, but just watch it take place. And then we'll get into the agenda, why all you good people are here. So, Madam City Clerk, are we in compliance with the Nevada Open Meeting Law?
Yes, sir, we are.
Great. Tonight we have the opportunity to have the invocation given by one of our great bishops here in North Las Vegas, George White. And following that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Goins Brown, who's sitting to my right. Please rise.
To the mayor, the council, and each and every one of you, the staff, the city of North Las Vegas. The scripture reads, I exhort you, therefore, that, first of all, supplication, prayer, intercession, giving of thanks, be made for all men, for kings, for all that are in authority, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God, our Savior, who we would have all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this day that you have given us today. Lord God, there's challenging times in this world today. Scripture is literally unfolding before our eyes that perilous times would come. Earthquakes in diverse places, wars and rumors of wars. Lord God, we're in trying times, and we thank you that this council, this mayor has taken a humbling step to involve you, God, in this day. Father, we need you, God. And you said we don't have to come before you begging, but you said we can come before you boldly. Father, today we pray your blessings upon this city, that we might live quiet and peaceable lives. Father, we thank you for continued wisdom and guidance in every way. Father, we need your protection. Father, we don't want to face another mass shooting. Children are getting ready to go back to school. Father, we plead your protection over the children and the teachers also. Father, bless our community in every way. Father, we pray even, oh God, for the minimum of crime. And Father, we all learn how to live together, no matter what color of our skin. Father, we confess our sins before you, God. Nobody's perfect. We don't have it all together. But God, we're trusting you. God, even on this evening, there's various decisions and various things on the agenda. Father, we pray today that this meeting will be carried out respectfully, honestly, as human beings, oh God, respecting one another, that we might be a city, an example to other cities. You said that the city shall be exalted by the blessings of the upright. Father, we speak blessings upon this city. Into every area we pray. And Father, we thank you. And we ask these blessings in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bishop. tell us a little bit about your church and give us some updates on how it's going.
Wow. I don't have the time, Your Honor. You give a preacher this much time. First of all, I call myself a desert baby, grown up in Vegas. I came here when I was 3 years old. Clark High School graduate, UNLV, music education and performance. Then I got the call of God. We've been ministering in this city now for 30 years. We have various ministries from young people. We have a Mentor for Miracles program for young people. We're embarking right now on a building project of $500,000 we're dealing with right now. Women's ministries. We do everything that we can to impact our community. A lot of times we don't have all the resources to give media attention to what a lot of times other churches are doing. But we do ministry in a big way, from food vouchers to gas cards, to do everything that we can to help our fellow men. But the main priority that God has called me to do is to preach the gospel, which I believe is the last reasonable hope for humanity. We need hope in this hour. So many things are trying, and we watch people lose their minds, depression, anxiety. And our main goal, we're on KCEP radio station every Sunday morning, the Voice of Faith broadcast. Feed your faith and starve your doubts every Sunday morning at 7:30 a.m. And that's what we're doing around the globe, continuing to feed your faith, starve your doubt. And that's literally, because there's so many things we could be negative about. There's so many things that we can be doubtful about. But our goal is to continue to feed faith to the hearts of people as never before in our church, from ages from 3 all the way up. One of the oldest members in our church just passed away. She was 102 years old. And that was honorable that we were able to send her home to the Lord. So you can go to the website. You want to know more about George White Ministry, just Google us. You'll find us on all basic platforms, and you can find more about us there. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're a good man, a good civic leader.
Thank you very much, sir.
We're going to have a presentation right now for the business of the month, Councilman Barone. Every month we choose a business within North Las Vegas as making an impact in our community, and every councilman gets an opportunity to do this 3 times a year. So Councilman Barone, we're going to go down and while you do your presentation, business presentation.
Can we have Edwin El Jefe come up? That must be you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah. I have the pleasure of recognizing this month's Business of the Month. When it comes to medical services, here in North Vegas, we're always looking for someone else to come and join the family. I myself, when I was injured and I needed to get some physical therapy, couldn't find anyone here in the downtown area. But now there is someone who can help me out. This month, it gives me a great pleasure to recognize Suarez Physical Therapy. They're located at 2415 Reynolds Avenue, suite number 200. This is your 4th location. His 4th location, and he opened up in November 2021. The owner and founder here, Edwin Suarez El Jefe, has one goal in mind: to help people improve their quality of life through personalized physical therapy. Edwin's childhood apartment was located on the corner of 28th Street and Bonanza, and it was a passion of his to open his 4th location here in Northeast Las Vegas. So you're basically one of our neighborhood guys, right? Suarez brings sorely needed medical-related services to our underserved community. What sets their clinics apart from the rest is that they pride themselves in offering a care experience to every patient. That means they will treat you like family. So for today, we welcome Suarez Physical Therapy to the North Las Vegas family. And are these other representatives here? Obviously, it's you. I'd like to also maybe call up that they'd like to come up if they're here. Areli Gonzalez, Ray Serafin, Claudia Gonzalez, and Amalia Vasquez. Are any of them here?
They're all here. Well, two out of the 5 are here.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'll read what this says, and we'll give you a round of applause, and we'll give you a chance to speak. So here it says, to Suarez Physical Therapy for your innovative mission to help people improve their quality of life through incomparable attention and with a care experience through their recovery. Thank you for your exceptional service and your contributions to our community. We wish you continued success and growth. And this comes to you from the City of Las Vegas on behalf of the Mayor and City Council. Congratulations. We won't mention that. We won't mention that he went to Vegas High School. He's still from the neighborhood, right? Come on up. Yeah. Get a picture shaking the hand. Maybe as your team comes up, we can say a few words. How many people do you guys employ at this and then overall?
This is a significant other, Molly, and this is Ray, my marketer, and Aurelie, my CFO. And so I've been in practice for close to 20 years, and it was always a mission of mine to come full circle back to the community where I grew up in. And so I grew up on 28th Street in Bonanza, went to the old Las Vegas High School. I'm sorry for the Rancho people here, but I hope you still love me. And I can see I see you're welcoming me to the community, so hopefully I get a get out of jail free card. But so I appreciate the fact that you welcomed us back into the community. Again, it was always my mission to come in full circle. And so we're not too far from here. And so we're more than happy to treat anyone, with any type of motor vehicle accidents, work injuries, so on and so forth, acute trauma. And, we're not located too far from here. So, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for welcoming me back to where it all started for me here in North Las Vegas. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good luck. Thank you. Thanks again.
Ms. Clerk, do you need this?
Yes.
Thank you, Councilman Barone. That was very nice. We're going to move on to council items now. Once again, Councilman Barone.
It's almost Hispanic heritage, but not quite. Although I'm going to talk about it. That was Selena there. Please forgive me there, Mayor. So real fast here, Councilwoman Pamela Goins-Brown and Mayor Pro Tem Pamela Goins-Brown and I have been very busy the last couple of weeks. We hosted a back-to-school backpack giveaway with a lot of other necessary help here at the Neighborhood Recreation Center last Thursday, July 28th. We definitely want to thank all of our community partners and sponsors who came, provided much-needed school supplies, backpacks, social services, and resources to hundreds of constituents. The very next day, that was last Friday, we had a really spectacular event, Unplug and Play, where we gave out literally, I think, about 1,000 toys that are not related to technology. We threw them away and gave away fantastic toys that help young people, children, reconnect to their peers and to their family and get them away from the scourge of electronic toys. So we definitely want to thank all of our staff who put that together, and of course, all the event sponsors. Speaking of fun things to do, if you could, please join us at a pool party that I'll be hosting, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, Saturday after school starts, on August 13th from 12 to 3. And it's at Petite Pool at here at Jim Bridger Middle School, where the mayor and I went to school, right? There'll be tacos, lots of food, music, fun, activities. There'll probably be a few guys, and it's totally free. The entrance will be free. Come and join us again. Not this Saturday, but Saturday, August 13th. Finally, since I have so many people here, and it looks like some of you might speak Spanish, I'm very happy to say that our third annual Hispanic Heritage Kickoff, our Grito de Dolores, will be on September 15th from 5 to 9 p.m. at Liberty Park, which is right outside. And again, there'll be some very special guests. We'll be ringing the Liberty Bell, and we'll be recognizing not just Mexican Independence Day, but to kick off the Hispanic heritage. Mayor, thank you so very much.
Thank you. Councilman Churchio.
Thank you, Mayor. Just let me mention a couple of things very briefly. This coming Saturday at Skyview, our generational facility that's operated by the YMCA right now, we're having an end-of-summer back-to-school bash. And, of course, that'll be the date would be August 6th from 4 to 6 p.m. The admission is free. We'll have free food and school supplies for all the children that attend while they last. Let me give you some idea of the coming attractions. Every year, I kind of took over from Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson, and I have the privilege of putting on a bingo at Skyview. That'll be coming in September, I believe, and then in November we're having the big Paws in the Park event, where we love to have all of you come with your pets, dress them up, and there'll be prizes, awards given out, and we'll have sponsors there and vendors there. So I look forward to seeing as many people with their little pets and little babies there as we can get. So keep those two events in mind as we go forward. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Owens-Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to piggyback on what my colleague Isaac Barone said, I just want to name the sponsors that were at the backpack giveaway and the Unplug and Play event, and just to say thank you again to all of the staff who worked so hard to make this event happen. So I'd like to thank United Movement Organized Kindness, who was Peter, Good 360, Toys for Tots, the Las Vegas Lights Team, La Bonita Supermarket, Bimbo Bread Company, of course, our own fire department, and, of course, our North Las Vegas Police Department and our police explorers. So thank you all for making this event so successful. Last month, we were fortunate and so gracious enough to host the Las Vegas Valley Police Academy graduation, and I'm just proud to announce that we had 7 North Las Vegas police officers to go through the academy and graduate. We had 5 from the Clark County School District Police Department and 1 from the Las Vegas Fire Bomb Squad that all participated in this graduation. So congratulations to all, and that's just more officers out there to protect and serve our streets and our neighborhoods. And then lastly, at the amphitheater over the weekend on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think they canceled Friday's show, but they had their matinee on Sunday. It was Sean Torrey, who represents Broadway in the Hood, and it's in Broadway in the Hood. They did a play called The Lion King Jr., and if you missed it, you missed a treat. I'm hoping that they will do it again, but in the fall, it was a little warm out there, a little humid out there. It was an amazing performance, and a lot of the cast members in that theater troupe live in North Las Vegas, so kudos to them, and if you ever get a chance to see any of their productions, please do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councilman Black.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. Sounds like the back-to-school events are quite plentiful, but I think that's awesome because there's a need for the help and support. I'm having one. I partner each year with Commissioner Marilyn Kirkpatrick at the Silver Mesa Rec Center this Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m. We'll have food, swimming, snow cones. She serves them up herself. She's the snow cone queen, Marilyn Kirkpatrick. Will be giving away 450 backpacks for the first those that arrive first, and some awesome raffle prizes, including 10 really great quality BMX bicycles from the Vault Bike Shop that were paid for by Las Vegas Paving. I love bicycles. I love giving away bikes each year, and also partnership with Southern Nevada Health District Move Your Way program. That's a grant program to encourage people to move for physical activity with whatever method you like to do, dancing, bike riding, whatever it may be. Also, on the 19th of July, many of you or most of you may not know, but something historic occurred in our community. On July 19th, out in the Apex Industrial Area, we broke ground on a complex. It's called the North Vegas Logistics Park or Logistics Center, and it's the first of its kind in Southern Nevada, a 1 million square foot footprint building times two separate buildings. We broke ground on. I just wanted to announce that that's really a phenomenal opportunity for our community to grow and diversify our economy. Thank you, Mayor Lee.
Thank you very much. Well, you guys are really busy in your districts. Your residents have got to be very excited to have you as their leaders. Now, this is a point where I told you we're going to go into a redevelopment agency meeting. It's a quick little meeting where we talk about the downtown, some of the redevelopment stuff going on there. And then at this point in time, I turn the gavel over to Mayor Pro Tem Goins Brown, and she is the, well, wait,
Thank you, Mayor.
Isaac, are you the chairman still this week, or do we?
Not till we do the appointment.
Okay. So I turn it over to you, right, Isaac?
No, I'll do it.
Okay, we did we switch seats?
We'll switch when
okay,
we do the
I
appointment.
wasn't
Okay.
sure of that. All right.
In a little bit,
So anyway, moving on to the redevelopment agency.
And I just have a correction. It's Tori Russell for Broadway in the Hood. Thank you, whoever sent me that text. I really appreciate that for correcting my mistake. So now we're moving on to the Redevelopment Agency First Public Forum. Now is the time to speak on any posted Redevelopment Agency agenda items. Madam City Clerk, do we have any blue cards or written comments?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Thank you. Moving on to the Redevelopment Agency agenda.
Item 1, redevelopment regular meeting agenda of August 3rd, 2022. Chairwoman Goins Brown and agency members, it's our recommendation to approve the redevelopment agency agenda as published.
Questions or comments? Okay, if not, I'll call for a motion.
Move to approve.
And that motion passes. Moving on to business.
Item 2, chairman and vice chairman of the North Las Vegas Redevelopment Agency, filling terms ending on June 30th, 2023 for possible action.
Any questions or comments? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, I know you and I have been trading off here as chairman and vice chair for a time, and I would respectfully request that I be appointed as the chair of the Redevelopment Agency once again for the term that would be ending June 30th, 2023.
Okay.
And with that same motion, I would like to also, or maybe it can be taken in one motion to appoint the Mayor Pro Tem as the vice chair.
In one motion.
I would like to do that all in one motion, if that's okay. That would be my motion.
That's your motion. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to the second public forum. Madam City Clerk, do we have any blue cards or written comments?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Thank you. With that being said, I will close the public forum, and I will now adjourn this meeting of the Redevelopment Agency back to the City Council meeting and to Mayor Lee.
Thank you. So what just happened is we just switched leaders on the redevelopment agency. Ms. Goins Brown has been the chairman, and Councilman Brown has been her vice chairman. And we have two wards that have a lot of the downtown activities taking place there, and so they have just switched seats now, and they're going to continue to move forward to bring in new and exciting things to the downtown area of North Las Vegas. So welcome, Councilman Brown and Ms. Vice Chair. Thank you. Moving on to the City Council's first public forum. This time is set aside on comments on posted agenda items. Items listed under the public hearing section of the agenda has its own public hearing when it's heard. So if you want to speak on items on today's agenda other than the public hearing, now would be that time. Madam City Clerk, do we have anybody that has put in something on the first public forum? Mr. Val Thomason, are you here for the big event here, or is this something else on the agenda? Huh? The big event? Okay, so that time will be coming. Will we have people testifying on that? Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this time the City Council on something, a post-agenda item that they won't have a chance to later? Seeing none, we will close the public comment, public forum, and we're going to move on to the agenda now.
Item 3, City Council regular meeting agenda of August 3rd, 2022. Mayor and Council, it's our recommendation to approve the agenda as published.
Thank you, Councilman. Any comments or questions? If not, the chair will take a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Move for approval.
We have a motion. Please cast your vote. Items approved. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Mayor and Council, the consent agenda consists of items number 4 through 15. It's our recommendation to approve as published.
Thank you, Councilor. Any comments or questions on the consent agenda? If not, the chair will take a motion.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Please cast your vote. Items approved. Now, we've got a special item on the 7 and 8 we're going to take care of right now. Is that correct?
Correct, Council. I want to first thank you for approving the consent agenda, which included items 7 and 8, which was the appointment for Jacqueline Gravatt as Chief of Police and Michael Harris as Assistant Chief of Police. I know since they had family that actually flew in for this event, they're thankful that you appointed it, that you ratified their appointments, or as I teased Jackie, that her family would be here for a funeral instead of her appointment. But at this time, we would like to, you can indulge me for a second, we'll do a pinning ceremony. Chief Harris will have his daughter Kennedy that will be pinning him, and then Chief Gravatt will have her husband, Lieutenant Barney Brecken, that will be pinning her. And if it's okay, if we could just invite those families down here and council to the front so we could do this little ceremony for them.
Council, let's go down.
So we'll do first Chief Harris. Yeah, don't stick them. So this is, we're very excited for this, Chief Harris. When I first met him, in fact, I'm glad to see our former chief in here, because when I first met him, you were chief, I don't know, she'd been chief for a couple months, and after an interview with him, I turned to her after he left, and I said, man, you better be glad I didn't know him 4 months ago, because I was just blown away, just an amazing leader, amazing leadership here in the city and in his previous life. So this is great for the city of North Las Vegas. I think that what you bring to the department is exactly what the department needs at this time. So Jackie will be pinned by her husband, and he's a police officer here too. He's not actually here for Halloween. He's really a police officer. Yeah, exactly.
So Jackie's family's back there that just flew in from St. Louis, right back there. Yeah. And since I'm from south of St. Louis, I have to say go Cards, right? Go Cardinals. There we go. I see Jackie's mom. I want to thank you for raising such an outstanding woman. Well, and Mike's wife for raising a great Mike. But she is a tremendous leader in the city, and she's exactly what the city needs at this time. She has just been a rock star since she came on and has been in command staff, and we're so excited for her and for the future of the department in the city of North Las Vegas.
I just have to say that I feel extremely honored and blessed to be able to move the amazing men and women of the North Las Vegas Police Department together with the community to move forward to make sure that we're presenting the best quality of life for all of our citizens while continuing to develop the employees so they can continue to do what they do. I'm extremely grateful. I am humble, appreciative for God, for my family, for the leadership within the city. We are one community. Moving forward, we will all see that North Las Vegas and their citizens, we're all one. We look out for each other. Thank you. I am very appreciative and look forward to this opportunity.
So here's a little factoid. When most of us on the council came here right before the city was about ready to lose its charter, we were #1 in crime. And the city manager put $10 more million in this police budget. We have done everything we can to make sure the people in North Las Vegas have the finest police department. And now we are #4 in big cities. We versus Metro, sorry you guys, but you're not #1 anymore. Then there's Sparks and Reno, or back and forth on those, but we're #4 now in crime in big cities in North Las Vegas. And we're very proud of our former police chief and this police chief for making the residents of this community feel safe, and we're responsive in North Las Vegas. People come over here and commit a crime, we're not going to call we're not going to call 3 levels of leadership to see what we do. That policeman comes, he's coming to do his job. So don't bring crime over to North Las Vegas and expect you're not going to have to suffer the consequences of it.
Mr. Mayor, just one quick comment. I'd just like to note for everyone who's watching, I'd like to note that, of course, as I understand, our chief was the first black female patrol officer for the city of North Las Vegas. She and Assistant Chief Harris both worked their way up from the ranks. They came in as boot rookies and moved all the way up through the ranks to become the leaders of the department. And that's what happened here in Las Vegas. Our previous police chief, also my good friend, Alex Perez, also joined as a boot rookie and went all the way through the ranks to become the leader of our department. I think North Las Vegas is the place to make this thing happen.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to public hearings now.
Item number 16, VAC-05-2022, VTS Village 1, Parcel 1.07 PUE, for applicant D.R. Horton to vacate an existing public utility easement located near Niles Wild Street in conjunction with development of the property. For possible action, recommendation approved.
Hey, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this? Here we come. Did you fill out a blue card, sir? Okay, in the future, fill out a blue card so we can have it, we put it into the record, okay? And then before you leave, if you'll fill one out, all right? Please proceed.
Presenting D.R. Horton as the applicant. We have this PUE that's on item 16, same parcel we have on item 19. I was just wondering if they could be heard at the same time.
So 16 and 19 are companion items?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Okay. circle that real quick.
We'll have to bring it. We'll still have it in order,
Yeah.
Mayor, but there won't need to be another
Presentation.
Presentation, yes, sir.
So, do we have anybody? I'm going to open up for public hearing. Anybody here from the public that would like to discuss this item with the council? Now would be that time on item 16. Okay. Are you here for 16, sir? Okay. Did you fill out a blue card too?
I filled out another one. I filled out.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor and Councilman, and many of my friends here. Thank you. I would love for the council, before we do anything for builders, to make sure we understand what they're doing for folks who can't afford homes in our city. As someone who has lived in this city for close to 20 years and has a love for this city, I want to make sure that we're doing our level best to level the playing field for folks who can't afford a home. So I would love for us to make sure that the representative is giving us information on what D.R. Horton is doing for folks who can't afford a home. Thank you.
Yeah, this was for an easement, but I understand what you're saying. Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? If not, we're going to close the public hearing. Council, I'm going to close the public hearing. Anybody would like to make a motion on this? I think it's in
I'll make the motion.
yours, Councilman. Okay. Councilman Churchill.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. I'll be happy to go ahead and support and make a motion to approve VAC-05-2022.
Thank you. We have a motion. Please cast your vote. Items approved. Good presentation. 17.
Item number 17, VAC-06-2022, Villages Tule Springs for applicant Park Oak SOR, Tule Springs owner TRS LLC to vacate a portion of the existing public drainage easement along Tule Springs Parkway in conjunction with development of the property. For possible action, recommendation to approve.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Josh Johnson, 5725 West Badura Avenue.
Did you fill out a card?
I did not yet.
Okay,
Do so.
everybody out there in TV land, I'm not going to ask you if you filled out a card anymore. Pay attention to the rules. Come up here, do your business like professionals, and then everything will go well for us. So let's make sure we get that out, okay? So now that you're on my list, try to make me happy.
All right. This is an application for a vacation of a drainage easement. The drainage easement was dedicated with the Phase 1 portion of the improvements along Tule Springs Parkway. The Phase 2 portion of the improvements put in an underground storm drain that eliminates the need for the above-ground storm drain for which the easement was dedicated. And so now we're asking if that easement could be vacated.
What was your name again?
Josh Johnson.
Okay, that's Josh Thompson. I'm going to open this up for public hearing. Anybody here from the public that would like to talk to Mr. Josh Thompson about this, please come forward. Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. We have no other cards, Jackie, and down front or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. So anyway, the chair will take a motion. Councilman Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of stuff on the agenda today for the villages. A lot of good work going on out there. Thank you. So I'll be happy to go ahead and make a motion to approve item number 17, which is VAC-06-2022, Villages at Tule Springs.
Thank you. Please cast your vote. Items approved.
Thank you.
Item number 18, review of the city clerk's certification of sufficiency, finding the petition submitted for verification on June 30th, 2022 by Nevadans for Neighborhood Stability insufficient. For possible action, staff recommendation to approve the certificate of insufficiency.
Thank you. So on this item right here, what we're doing is we're providing conversation on the petition submitted verification. We understand there's a lot of personal instances and things that are happening throughout the whole community, but this issue is just specifically on did the city clerk do her job. So what we're going to do here, I've got a list of people that are prepared to speak. Now, when we get done with this item, if you want to stay to the second public hearing and say, let me tell you how this is affecting the life of people, that would be the time. But this is a conversation just on did the city clerk do her job properly? So let me get this.
Mayor, we'd like to begin with Scott Silva and Claudia Guayo, who will come and make a presentation before the council.
Yes, please come forward. Thank you very much.
Oh, Sorry, Steve. Yeah, Steven Silva. I don't know what I exactly said, but I'm sure it's not what his mom called him. So.
She called me Scott once or twice. It happens. All right. Good afternoon, members of the City Council, Mr. Mayor. I am Steven Silva. I'm outside counsel for the City of North Las Vegas, assisting on this matter. We are here on a review of the clerk's certificate. We're here because there was a petition seeking an ordinance to be passed by this City Council or in the alternative placed on the ballot, filed by what's called the Petitioners Committee. Back in May of 2022, May 18, 2022, an affidavit was filed beginning the petition process. It was filed by 5 members of the community, and it was supposed to set forth in full the proposed ordinance as well as attest to the fact that the Petitioners Committee would circulate a full and complete copy of the petition. I want to begin by addressing just some of the quick facts and numbers here. First, the petition itself was filed on June 30th of 2022. A little quiet? Okay, I can speak up too. The petition itself was filed with supporting signatures on June 30th, 2022. The petition was supported by certain signatures that had been collected by the Petitioners Committee. The raw number of signatures submitted was 3,396. The signatures were processed by the clerk's office in cooperation with the county under an interlocal agreement, and determined that 3,308 of those signatures could be counted and used to do the various computations to determine whether there were enough signatures to support the initiative. Because there were more than 500 signatures submitted, the law requires the number of signatures to be determined by what's called a sample. 500 of the signatures were taken using a process approved by the County Register of Voters, and they were then put through the verification process. As a result of the verification process, 407 of the 500 votes in the sample were verified. This created a ratio of 81% verified signatures. The county interprets the sampling statute to then require them to distribute the 81% ratio. It's actually 81.4, where they used a rounded number, 81%, to the number of legitimate signatures that they had on file. They then applied the 81% factor to 3,308 and came to a total number of verified signatures under the sampling method of 2,679. Those are the numbers that we begin with. Once that calculation was made, the package was submitted to the clerk to review and determine whether the petition were sufficient or insufficient. The clerk's review determined that the petition, unfortunately, was insufficient. She executed a certificate of insufficiency related to the Petitioners Committee, and they have requested that this council review the determination of insufficiency as it is contained in the clerk's certificate. The recommendation from staff is going to be to approve the certificate issued by the city clerk. There are a couple of issues here. I'm going to preview them very briefly. The first and probably the biggest fight here is the number of signatures submitted and choosing the correct election to measure them against. In addition, the clerk identified 2 defects in the petition itself. First, in the petition that was circulated, there appears the phrase, "The people of the state of Nevada do and act as follows." That phrase does not appear on the petition that was submitted along with the affidavit back on May 18, 2022. After review, the city clerk's determination is that this does not substantially comply with the requirement that the full ordinance be set forth when the affidavit is filed. The difference contains an error. It is not simply that there was a word misspelled. It is not simply that there was maybe a comma that was changed. In fact, a new sentence was imposed and placed into the petition that was circulated, and it is not a true sentence. the petition, as proposed, could not be an act of the people of the state of Nevada. It could only be an act of the city of North Las Vegas, the people of the city of North Las Vegas. So not only is it different than what was submitted back on May, it is actually erroneous and misleading, and therefore does not substantially comply. Additionally, and separately, in the particular version of the petition that was submitted along with the signatures, the June 30th petition, certain provisions of the proposed ordinance and certain portions of the petition itself were in bold. The statutes require that the petition be in uniform size and style. Bold is not uniform in size or style. These two deficiencies appear on the petition packet itself. Now, the standard of review for addressing petitions is what we call substantial compliance. Initiative petition statutes are meant to give power to the voters, and so it is not that any tiny defect should invalidate it. The Supreme Court has been uniform on that point. However, where the petition does not substantially comply with the statutes, it cannot advance further. It is simply insufficient. The major issue here, however, is the number of signatures. The number of signatures is a simple mathematical fact. There is no substantial compliance to be applied to here. Either the proper number of signatures was submitted or they weren't. In this instance, we have determined that the proper number of signatures was not met. This is because when we are comparing the number of signatures submitted, we are looking to see if it equals or exceeds 15% of the voters who voted in the last preceding city election. On June 30th, the last preceding city election was the June 14, 2022 city primary election. At that election, within the precincts of North Las Vegas, 27,771 ballots were cast. Now, given the anonymity of voting, we cannot tell that all 27,771 people participated in the city election, because that election, that date, and those ballots and those precincts had multiple elections in which voters could vote. There was a partisan primary at the state level and county level, and there was the nonpartisan city primary city election. The largest vote count in the city primary election was 26,448 votes. That was in the mayoral race. We count those votes and apply a 15% factor. That is what the statute commands us to do, and that number is 3,967. Under any analysis, the petitioners committee did not meet that threshold. Their raw counts, even under their preferred count, they in their request, they say, please don't use the 3,308, use the 3,396. It does not matter. They are still below the threshold. When you apply the 81% validity rate determined by the county and the city clerk in conjunction with the county, we're looking at 2,679. That's 1,300 votes, more or less. It's 1,280 less than the required number of votes. Signatures, I apologize. We're measuring number of voters and their signatures against the raw number of votes in the preceding election. That is the long and the short of it. They simply did not meet the required threshold. Now, when the insufficiency determination was sent, we received a letter from the petitioners committee arguing certain points, and we're going to address them now to show the analysis of the city and the city clerk in reaching this determination. The argument is essentially that we should disregard the last preceding city election in violation of the statute and instead use the number set forth in the June 2019 general city election. We cannot do so. Their arguments are as follows. Let's see here. First, we need to determine which came as the last preceding election. That's the task here. Preceding means to come before. Last means there's no more of a thing after. Last preceding means essentially most recent. The petitions filed on June 30th, 2022. which was the most recent, June 14, 2022, or June 11, 2019. The numbers are inescapable. The last preceding election cannot have been in June 2019 when there was another subsequent election in June 2022. From their notes, they begin, on July 1st, the committee turned in 3,396 signatures in support of the petition. It's actually incorrect. They turned it in on June 30th. It doesn't matter that I assume it was a typo, and it doesn't change the analysis here. This is where it starts to matter. We believe that the primary city election is the city election referred to in the statute. Their letter says the city clerk relied on the June 14, 2022 primary election as the referent election. This is incorrect. Primary election and primary city election are not the same things. The Nevada Supreme Court has instructed that the phrase city election, and general election are not synonymous with another. There was a City of Reno case in which the City of Reno attempted to use a Reno general city election to satisfy a statute that required a general election. And the Nevada Supreme Court said no dice. We can clearly tell, both on the statutes and the Supreme Court interpretation, that a primary election is not a primary city election. They go further, and they say that the June 14th election was a primary election, not a general election. They cite the charter, which notably says primary municipal election as opposed to just primary election. And they argue that indeed this was a closed primary election and that voters could only vote for candidates in the party in which they are registered. That is not true. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of Nevada election law. As I said, on that date there was a closed partisan primary election. That is true, but it's not the relevant election here. Rather, here, the relevant election was the primary city election. We can tell that these are different because they're defined as different elections. There's a primary election, a presidential preference primary election, general election, and notably, as a separate and different thing, a primary city election or a general city election. Primary city elections are governed by different rules in primary elections. There's a whole different chapter of law devoted to municipal elections. The races are nonpartisan, and importantly, in nonpartisan primary city elections, anyone who secures 50% of the vote wins outright. Meaning that there might not be a general city election at all. They make a few other statements concerning these arguments. For example, they say that the time after election was a little short. They say that the interval between learning and having to satisfy the sufficiency requirement would only be 2 days because there was only a 15-day window after the primary, citing to NRS Chapter 293. Again, this is mistaken. They are citing and relying on the wrong provisions of Nevada law. Here, the election canvass was certified on June 24th. The committee says the June 14th election was not certified until the 29th, giving only a 2-day window. That's not true. First off, it's immaterial. Even if it were true, it would not matter. We are constrained and bound to follow the law, even if it's tight. But more importantly, the contention is just false. They again misunderstand the difference between primary city election and primary election, and the statute that they rely on simply does not apply. Rather, the city charter and NRS 293C apply, requiring a canvass within 10 days. The city council held that special meeting on June 24th to canvass and certify the election. The meeting provided an extra layer of notice that there had been an intervening election beyond the fact that the election itself happened and was public. It was a publicly known fact. We're going to come back to this in a moment because I'd like to go back and go over a little bit of the timeline here. One of their contentions is that there was a certain phone call in March that perhaps confused them. I take some exception with the characterization here. There was a phone call back on March 8th in which the petitioners committee, although they didn't identify themselves as being a petitioners committee that was going to do a rent control ballot, they didn't identify what they were doing or their ultimate aim, asked the city clerk what the last preceding election had been, what the relevant election was. They asked this in March 2022, and she gave the utterly honest answer that it was June 2019. Now I say utterly honest here as opposed to just accurate because in the letter, the petitioners committee cast aspersions on our good clerk, saying that her conduct was utterly dishonest. I take singular offense at that characterization. Nevertheless, despite being given accurate and honest information, the committee delayed. Their delay dooms their initiative. Their argument is essentially that the clerk should have prognosticated, forecast, anticipated that they might delay past the next election, which they knew about because it was public. Everyone knew it was coming. But that she should have prognosticated that they might delay, might miss the window, and that the intervening election might occur, and should have warned them of that fact. This is their argument. It fails. It fails on several grounds. First off, she answered the question that they asked. Secondly, the clerk can't give legal advice. The clerk isn't allowed to walk them through a decision tree and say, if then this, if then this. She was able to, and she accurately relayed an answer of fact to a question of fact. That was appropriate, proper, and utterly honest. More fundamentally, though, it wouldn't matter. Even if they were confused by her answer, the clerk cannot, in a phone call, change the law. The clerk cannot, in a phone call, excuse this council from following statutes passed by the Nevada legislature. And what does the Nevada legislature say? The Nevada legislature says we are looking for the last preceding city election. I'd like to talk about the interpretation of the statute now. The statute says verbatim, and you'll keep hearing me say this, and I apologize for the redundancy, but just to make sure we're all clear here, last preceding city election. The committee's letter asks us to read in a word that does not appear in the statute. They ask us to imagine that it says last preceding general city election, but it does not. By contrast, other sections within this series of statutes, for example, the statute we're talking about is 295.205 subsection 2, says last preceding city election. A different statute within the same series, 295.200, uses the phrase next general city election or general election. The legislature here is clearly using different language, which means that it is clearly referring to different things. This is a doctrine of law. It's a maxim of law, expressio unius. If we say one thing one way, it means we must have been excluding the other meaning when we say something else in a different spot. The question might be posed whether this might have been an oversight. Legislation can be a rough business in a state like Nevada where we've got 120 days every 2 years to get it all done. Maybe it was tight. It was not. And we know this. We can know this because when this statute was enacted, it was done through an assembly bill. The assembly bill, in turn, followed a bill draft request. And in that bill draft request, there was a suggestion, proposed language, that said, for this provision, general municipal election. And the word general was stricken. So we know that it does not mean general. We know that it can't mean general because we know that the legislature deleted the word general. On the statute, there is simply no escaping the conclusion that the word city election means city election, which can embrace either a primary city election or a general city election. It is pure math. The committee makes a policy argument that perhaps we should disregard the primary city election, in part because it's a partisan primary election, which we know that it's not, and perhaps we should just look for general city elections. They make an argument that the passage of AB 50, which moved the dates of municipal elections to sync up with statewide and presidential elections, created an odd gap where there's a 3-year gap between general elections, and that shouldn't be a problem here because it's a one-off thing. Unfortunately, and again, betraying their not understanding how municipal elections in Nevada work, they overlook the fact that there are not always general elections in municipal races. By law, a municipal election, a city election, ends at the primary if someone secures more than 50% of the vote. I'll come back with some additional statistics in it, but I'll just preview by saying that that's happened in this city in 2015. It's happened in the city of Las Vegas in 2013 and 2015. In the city of Yerington up north, 2017 and 2019 passed without a general city election, according to the records that we found from the Secretary of State in the city of Yerington. This statute is meant to embrace every incorporated city within the state of Nevada. It is therefore unsurprising that they would elect, the legislature would choose the broader category of city election to ensure that the most recent and best election was used to make sure that we were properly tracing the demographics over time. You can imagine the difference in demography over 6 years. We'll come back to that in a few moments. Their last primary argument is that we should disregard the statute because the Constitution says something different. Now, I will say first and foremost that this is a city council. It has broad police powers, but it does not have the power to invalidate a legislative act duly passed by the legislature. We are constrained to follow the statute. But I think that it is prudent to discuss the Constitution anyway to make sure that we're not doing something unconstitutional. Here's the text of the Nevada Constitution. The initiative and referendum powers provided for are further reserved to the registered voters of each county and each municipality as to all local, special, and municipal legislation of every kind in or for such county or municipality. Here's the language that we're scrutinizing tonight. In counties and municipalities, initiative petitions may be instituted by a number of registered voters equal to 15% or more of the voters who voted at the last preceding general county or municipal election. Then referendum petitions may be instituted by 10% or more. This is the sentence that they want to draw our attention to and argue. In counties and municipalities, initiative petitions may be instituted by a number of registered voters, 15% or more of the last preceding general county on one hand, or municipal election on the other. The plain language leads to an unambiguous interpretation. The sentence ends with the subjunctive, disjunctive, or, and then municipal election. The plain, unmodified, and unambiguous text just says unadorned municipal election. Their argument is that the sentence is actually ambiguous. Their argument says, hey, there's a couple different ways you might read this sentence. One way you could do it is you could infer that it means in both counties and municipalities you can use either the last preceding general county or municipal election. That's a permissible reading of the word or. It might be a conjunctive. It might be an either-or situation. That's frankly a silly and nearly absurd reading of this provision, but it's linguistically valid. No one's pushing it. It's just an example of how construction can be tricky. Here's their reading. What you do is you get to the last part of the sentence and you say general county or municipal election. That word general is a series modifier. It modifies the series of elections, county or municipal. It assumes that county and municipal elections are serial, although the Nevada Supreme Court guidance that election terms are terms of art and are not the same as one another calls this into doubt, and it's inconsistent with the statute. Their reading requires the statute to be inconsistent. This is our reading. This is called a distributed referent analysis. This sentence has two subjects that are in parallel to each other. They are parallel, they do not intersect, they are not in series. In counties and municipalities, so on and so forth, last preceding general county or municipal election. The better reading of this provision is to distribute general county to county, where it belongs, and municipal election to municipalities, where it belongs. This distributes each rule expression to its referent, and I apologize that this grammar lesson gets a little bit boring and tiring. And it's consistent with the statute, which is the better reasoning for the rule. As I said before, not every cycle has a general city election. Just for example, we didn't have one in 2015 and 2003. We're not an outlier. It's happened in other municipalities, Las Vegas, Henderson, Yerington. And I note that in the Las Vegas Valley, and I apologize, this might be a little bit confusing, that Las Vegas there means Las Vegas Valley. We went from 1.97 million to 2.45 million. Over the course of some of these electoral spans. There is a significant difference in the population. This graph shows how the counting starts to fall apart. It's 2022 now. And we were looking for a general city election. We'd be all the way back in 2019. And you can see that we would be skipping a valid city election, the primary city election of June 14, 2022. You might think it's okay to skip one in this one if we're looking for generals. But if you just trace the generals back, you're going to see that when you get to April 4th, 2017, you can't get there. You got to skip June 27, 2015. There's an X because there was no election held at that time. If you imagine that we have the same situation as Las Vegas or Yerington, where multiple elections are skipped, if you X'd out that June 13, 2017, you could be looking back from 2019 all the way to 2013. That is an absurd reading of the statute. It frustrates the purpose of the statute. The other reason that we can reject their reading has to do with the history of the constitutional provision itself. If we disregard the plain language of the constitutional provision that just says municipal and we start engaging in our interpretive methodologies, we cannot ignore history. Article 19, Section 4 was added to the Nevada Constitution in 1962 by a vote of the people. But the people didn't draft it. It didn't spring fully formed from Zeus's head like Athena. It was drafted by the Nevada legislature. AJR 11 in 1960 and 1961 proposed the language that was ultimately approved by the voters, and it used specifically general county or, on the other hand, municipal elections. The same legislative body in 1965, right after the passage by the voters, formed an exploratory committee and drafted language to adopt statutes to facilitate the implementation of the initiative process. So the same body drafted the phrase general county or municipal and then drafted the statutes specifically rejecting the word general in front of municipal elections for the statute. It would defy logic to assume that the same legislative body messed itself up contemporaneously. The better reading is to review the materials holistically and determine that the legislature knew exactly what it was referring to. Municipal elections for municipalities, general county elections for county elections and county initiatives. The structure of 295 today is consistent. There's a provision of the statutes for county initiatives, and it requires a general county election, just like the Constitution says. By contrast, the city initiatives require a city election, exactly the same way that the Nevada Constitution requires or municipal election. It cannot be that the legislature meant two different things when they drafted parallel provisions. That interpretation is deficient and it must be rejected. One last thing that I would like to note before I wrap up for questions. The city clerk's office has received and is aware of multiple letters introduced into the record by interested parties. We have reviewed them, but their analysis does not form the basis of our presentation and opinion today. We have prepared this slideshow for the assistance of council as well as a draft report of what I just told y'all, and that is the basis of the clerk's decision. At this time, I am more than available for any questions.
Why don't we hold off? We've got a few more presenters on both sides, and we can poke holes into it after we listen to them.
Sounds great.
Okay with you?
My pleasure.
So if you'd stand by. Mr. Bice is here. He's representing the Realtors Organization. And then after him, we will then ask the leaders of the Culinary Union to come forth. And I think we can all recognize that we will be so happy we never went to law school when they get done. So, Mr. Bice.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Todd Bice, Pisanelli Bice. We have previously submitted, I just want to make sure that they are part of your record. On July 11, we submitted a notice of deficiency. This was before the clerk had issued her certificate raising concerns that we had with the initiative. And then also on August 2 of 2022, after we had seen the appeal of the clerk's decision regarding the certificate. So I want to make sure that those are part of the record, and I brought extra copies, as well as one document, which is some signatures that they were submitted. I just want to highlight a few points to you on. With respect to our first letter, what we raised were the issues that your city attorney, the outside counsel for the city attorney, has already raised, which are under NRS 295-205. It is an explicit requirement under state law that an initiative be filed with the city clerk before it is circulated for signature gathering. The initiative that was submitted on June 30 of 2022 with signatures was never filed. It was never filed at all with the city's clerk. And what we have uncovered since that point in time, including from a public records request, which we have attached to one of the documents we attached to our August 2 letter, was that document that was submitted, and this is what I wanted to show you all, and I put into the record here, the document that was submitted on July the 1st, or I'm sorry, on June the 30th, and was purportedly circulated for signatures, we do not believe that this document even existed on May 18 when they started gathering signatures. Because if you look at one of the requirements under Nevada law is you are required to have a very explicit affidavit signature. And one of the things that the signature gatherer must attest to is that he or she, is a resident, they're over 18 years old, and that I personally circulated this document and all signatures were affixed in my presence. Right? So this is just a sample of the documents that they submitted to your clerk on June 30. This document right here, the one that has the words added to it at the top that your counsel has already highlighted to you, as well as the highlighted findings, which are designed to draw attention only to the findings, to the exclusion of the ordinance. There's evidence that this document didn't exist on May 18 or any of the other days when all these signatures were gathered. Because if you look at the signature gathering that was attached to this document in the face of the verification, is that this document would have had to have existed on May 18 in order for these signatures to be valid. Because attached to it are purported signatures that were supposedly signed on May 18 and May 19, May 20, etc., etc. Well, what we found in a public records request to the city was that on this language that was added right here about we the people, that is, as your counsel has noted, is misleading. On June 1, long after they started gathering signatures, they sent an email to your clerk. And this email to your clerk on June 1, right here, raises this very issue about does the city require the phrase the people of the state of Nevada do and act as follows. In other words, on June 1, after they had already been gathering signatures, they were still inquiring about do we need to add this into the document? Because the document that they submitted later on June 30 plainly didn't exist. Someone has substituted this document at the time of filing with your offices, with your clerk, for the one that they had actually circulated. This document couldn't have been circulated on May 18 and thereafter because it didn't actually exist. Because they were asking your clerk on June 1 whether or not they should add that language into the ordinance. That is a very serious problem under the law. It's actually a crime to do that because the verification is required that the signature people signing be shown the actual document. You can't substitute a new document, a different document for it after you've gathered the signatures. And by all objective evidence, somebody did that. I don't know who did it, but you're entitled to know and you're entitled to ask them, how did the document that you submitted on June 30 with that language, how was that document being signed, supposedly being signed on May 18? when you were actually asking the city clerk, do we need to change the document? That is also another serious problem in addition to the points that your council made. And that is, so number one, the document that was submitted on June 30 was never filed with the clerk's office as required by state law. It was never filed, period. The signatures were clearly not for the document that they represent to you, that they circulated on, beginning on June 18, May 18, because that's what the signatures say. That document didn't even exist. So that can't possibly be true. And then last and finally, as your council has already outlined, the amount of signatures that they obtained simply aren't sufficient under the statute. And so my last point on this is, I've read the appeal and I read the attacks on the clerk, and those attacks were unwarranted. The clerk is following the law. She has to follow the law, just like ordinary citizens have to follow the law. And I think it's somewhat ironic in this era when we see what's going on, or we have seen what's been going on in Washington, D.C. with the hearings, that someone thinks that attacking an election official like the clerk or putting political pressure on an election official like the clerk should somehow yield a change. The law is black and white here, as your own counsel has pointed out, and the attacks on the clerk are completely unwarranted and completely should be rejected by the City Council. I thank you for your time, unless you have questions for me.
I think what we're going to do, your presentation stands.
Thanks.
We're going to have the rebuttal now, and then we'll call back up with the questions. So be prepared to answer their statements.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, Mr. Ted Papa George, if you would please come up now after hearing their testimony, and behind him will be your attorney, Paul Moore. And you are not limited to 3 minutes. I mean, you give your full presentation.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I think I'll be around 3 minutes, though. We won't be quite as long-winded. At least my part won't. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Papa George. I'm Secretary-Treasurer for the Culinary Workers Union. I have a few comments, and then, as noted, our attorney, Paul Moore, will then respond. On behalf of the Nevadans for Neighborhood Stability Petitioners Committee, and we have a response to the actions of the city clerk. So the Culinary Union represents over 7,300 members that live in North Las Vegas. 63% are Latinx, 18% Black. 2022 survey of Culinary Union members, 21% of the respondents said that their rent had gone up over $500. I'm here tonight on behalf of the thousands of hospitality workers that the Culinary Union represents who call North Las Vegas home. You'll hear some public comment later, and thank you. We appreciate the time granted for that from some of your constituents later on. Hundreds of Culinary Union members of North Las Vegas renters and homeowners are here tonight in this room in support of neighborhood stability. We represent thousands more of your constituents who signed the neighborhood stability petition, who are voters, who are taxpayers, and North Las Vegas residents. And everyone is watching what you do here today. You all are used to that. Mayor Lee, Council Members Churchill, Barone, Goins Brown, and Black, we urge you not to support these corporate landlords who benefit from these exorbitant rents. Please do not suppress the will of the voters and do the right thing for the residents of North Las Vegas, whom we serve. The neighborhood stability ballot measure is essential in North Las Vegas, we believe. We believe that it will affect the stability and safety of our neighborhoods and schools. The idea that corporate landlords are able to corner the market, buy homes, buy apartment buildings, and then drive up rents far beyond whatever is the percent of the cost that have went up in the last few years. We think that is somewhat outrageous, and it is your responsibility to move this forward. The 3,396 voters who signed the Neighborhood Stability Initiative knew what they were signing. The Culinary Union submitted more than 7 times the number of required signatures necessary to qualify the initiative petition this year. And we believe neighborhood stability should be on the ballot in November. We believe you should let the voters decide. And if the city council attempts to subdue the rights of voters, then unfortunately voters will have to move forward. We see lots of lawyers here today. That means we'll end up in court. That's unfortunate. The voters deserve to have the opportunity to vote on neighborhood stability this November 8th, and please do not silence the voters' constitutional rights. I appreciate you allowing me to have this few moments, and then I'd like to ask Paul Moore if he can come forward and further respond. Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, members of the council, for giving us time to respond here. We are here to attempt to head off a grave injustice and a violation of the Constitution. The Constitution does not allow cities to deny the people their right to have initiative measures put on the ballot based on technicalities, insubstantial technicalities. And as I'll describe to you, in this case, the committee has followed the letter of the law. There isn't even a question of substantial compliance. There is simply compliance with the law. The committee submitted an affidavit, which NRS 295 required that they do. Contrary to what Mr. Bice said to you, that statute did not require that the committee submit the petition that they would circulate. The petition and the ordinance being proposed are different things. What was required was that the committee submit the full text of the ordinance being proposed, and that is exactly what the committee did. It set out the text of the ordinance that would go into the city's municipal code if the initiative were enacted. After submitting the affidavit from the committee members and the text of the proposed ordinance, the committee received from the city clerk guidance in terms of the general information on initiatives and referenda, and put together an initiative petition. An initiative petition is different from the text of the proposed ordinance that is filed with the affidavit. Those are two different things. For example, the initiative petition that is circulated must include a description of effect, a 200-word description of what the effect of this initiative would be. That's not part of the proposed ordinance. Those are two different things. So the committee submitted exactly what the statute required. It submitted the text of the proposed ordinance that would be adopted. It then circulated a petition. That petition included, as the city clerk's guide suggested, prefatory language, not part of the text of the ordinance, but prefatory language stating the people of the state of Nevada do enact as follows. And that is here in the initiative and referendum guide that the committee received from the city clerk. Now, that was included with the petition that was circulated. I dispute the fact, the claim that's made by outside counsel or by Mr. Bice that this was a misleading or inaccurate statement. The people of the city of North Las Vegas are most certainly also the people of the state of Nevada. And there is nothing in including that statement with these petitions that were circulated that would have misled anyone. The petition says it's a city measure. The ordinance that's described says it applies to the city of North Las Vegas. The description of effect tells everyone what the application of this ordinance would be. So there is substantial compliance on that question. There is no argument here that including the prefatory language, the people of the state of Nevada do enact as follows, following the city clerk's express direction, can mean that there's non-compliance with the statute. The fact that the full text of the ordinance that was submitted with the affidavit differed from the petition that was being circulated is entirely immaterial. They are two different things. The petition contains all sorts of information that is not the full text of the ordinance that's being proposed. So that is a non-issue. Second, the city clerk rejected the petitions based on the fact that the petitions that were circulated had bolded findings, whereas the version that was submitted with the affidavit did not. That is also a totally immaterial technicality. There is no requirement that there be the same typeface on the text of the proposed initiative that's submitted to the city clerk with the affidavit and the text that is circulated with the petition. There is no requirement that those be exactly the same. What the Nevada statute says in NRS 295.205 is that the petitions themselves that are circulated must have common typeface and style. And that was done. That was also complied with. So this purported discrepancy between the version of the proposed ordinance that was filed with the affidavit and the version of the proposed ordinance that went with the petition is also a non-issue. Even if there were some requirement that the typeface of the version that went to the city clerk with the proposed ordinance with the affidavit and the version that was circulated with the petition, that those be the same in style or in typeface, which there isn't, substantial compliance existed here. There is no reason for arguing that the purposes of the statute, which is not to allow people to put things in teeny, teeny 8-point type so that people can't read them, the fine print. There's no argument that having bolded typeface in one version and non-bolded in another confuses anyone, is a problem for voters. This is a mere technicality if it exists at all, and it's not a basis for denying the people their right to initiative. So those discrepancies, purported discrepancies between the version that was filed and the version of the proposed ordinance that was submitted with the affidavit on May 18th cannot be a basis for the city council, for the city clerk, to deny the constitutional right to initiative. The main issue, as outside counsel says, is the question of which election should apply here. And here, the Constitution is unequivocal. The Constitution says that in counties and municipalities, initiative petitions may be instituted by a number of registered voters equal to 15% or more of the voters who voted at the last preceding general county or municipal election. That language is completely plain. The term general modifies both county or municipal election. Now, there was quite a bit of preface to dealing with this core issue from outside counsel. In fact, he danced around the issue quite a bit before finally coming at the very end to the heart of the matter, which is that the Constitution directs what must happen here. Notably, outside counsel described no precedent, no legal precedent for this city council to read the Nevada Constitution the way that he proposes. No Nevada court has ever said, you know what, general municipal election, general county election, it's actually two different things. For general county elections, for county elections, when we're figuring out how many votes you need, we're going to use the word general. For municipal elections, we're not. No court has said that. And yet, outside counsel is asking this council to adopt that interpretation of the Nevada Constitution in an effort to deny this committee, deny the people of North Las Vegas the opportunity to vote on this. And that's quite astounding, to be honest. When a statute uses prefatory language followed by a list of things, an adjective such as general, the standard rule is that that adjective is intended to apply to each of the listed things, unless there is some clear reason why that's not the case. No such clear reason exists here. The Nevada Constitution is plain. Now, one of the arguments that outside counsel raises is, well, we should interpret the Nevada Constitution to mean that we don't look to the last general municipal election, but only to the last general county election. And with municipal elections, it's any election that's happened. And he says we should do that because the Nevada statutes say last preceding city election. Well, that's putting a statute above the Constitution. That's not something that the council or the clerk can do. The Constitution is the highest law of the land. And the fact that the legislature, in adopting NRS 295, said last preceding city election, cannot alter the fact that the Constitution, when read in its most natural way, means that only the last preceding general municipal election applies. There were charts and graphs and timelines saying, well, this can lead to anomalous results, where in this case we're looking back 3 years to the last general election. But that doesn't matter. That does not change what the Constitution requires. And the Constitution does not permit the city to look back to the last preceding primary election. That is what outside counsel is asking the council here to say. When read correctly, it's clear that this initiative has more than enough signatures. In fact, according to the methodology used by the city clerk, and we dispute the slight difference between the total number of signatures submitted and the total number of signatures counted by the city clerk. But according to that methodology, the total number of valid signatures is estimated to be 2,679. Using the last preceding general election, which was in June of 2019, 476 signatures were required. So that's 6 times the number of signatures that were required to qualify this for the ballot. Outside counsel says, well, this shouldn't be adopted. This is the wrong policy because cities grow. And this city has grown since 2019. That may be. And of course, the Nevada legislature can change the rules on when municipal elections are held. It did that with AB 50. But that does not entitle a city to override the Nevada Constitution. And it certainly should not have a city council without any precedent interpreting the people's right to propose initiatives and to have them get on the ballot in a way that doesn't match the plain meaning, the plain language of the Constitution, and has never been adopted by a court in any published case. So, in summary, we are here because this is an overwhelmingly popular measure. This is a measure that received in a quite quick circulation time period, not the full 180 days that the statutes allow, but only a matter of months, 6 times the number of signatures that were necessary. And because the rights of the people under the Constitution are paramount. They should not be denied based on new and unprecedented interpretations of the Constitution, and they should not be denied based on technicalities that don't affect any voter, don't affect any understanding of what is being proposed. That is not the way the law is intended to work. I thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Papa George, where did he go? Oh, Ted. I'm going to call the other attorney up here, but I can take some public comment on this right now, but I think most of the public comment from this organization has to do with the effect of what's happening in their lives right now. Is that correct? Not on the legal basis? Is that what you were telling me?
That's correct. We're comfortable with waiting until the next.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Steve, I forget your last name, but I just have a couple of questions, and maybe council has a couple of questions, and then maybe you would, be able to answer some questions. Number one is, I was in the state legislature for 14 years. I was chairman of government affairs. Thank heavens it wasn't the Judiciary Committee, because you hear this all the time, this discussion. But the city council cannot speak for the Constitution. Counties they're creatures of the legislature. Cities have charters. So we have charter right now that states certain things. And one of the things in there has the word general and does not use general in certain cases, like a primary or something like that. And you went over this, but I want to hear it again. There's a thing called Scribner's error, which means maybe the scribe made a mistake. Maybe it should have been in there, but it wasn't. It didn't have to say general. It could say election. Would you go over that again?
Yes.
And then I want to know, what does our charter say?
Sure. Our charter, just to answer the last question first because it's easy, our charter breaks municipal elections into primary municipal elections and general municipal elections, and provides that an electoral cycle can end if 50% or more of the voters come in favor of a single individual in a primary municipal election. It parallels the state definition using municipal instead of city. Under Nevada law, under the statutes and the definitions, city and municipal are essentially synonyms. Municipal is usually used when you have a charter city, such as City of North Las Vegas, as opposed to a general law city, which is usually using the phrase city when referring to its elections. But under the statute, city elections encompasses both flavors. The North Las Vegas Charter clearly delineates primary municipal elections and general municipal elections. To go back to your first question concerning the potential for a Scrivener's error, could the legislature have inadvertently omitted the word general? The answer is no. If you read the legislative history, which I have, you can see that they clearly, explicitly struck out the word general from the provision that became this statute. Now, Mr. Moore made a comment that I'm arguing that you should ignore the Constitution in favor of the statutes. That's profoundly incorrect and misunderstands my argument almost as much as they misunderstand state election law. Instead, we know how to read the words or municipal election the same as preceding city election because they're drafted by the same people. It's not that we should look at the statutes and then reach back and try to contort the Constitution to match the statute. That's not the argument. The argument is the same people in the 1960s drafted both. Kind of like when we look at the Founding Fathers to look at the U.S. Constitution and interpret how they were using words, we know what the individuals and what the bodies were writing because they wrote consistently. Here, we know that they specifically rejected the word general. We know that they used the phrase or municipal election. And we know that in the statutes they used the unadorned phrase city election. The only logical reading is that all of that was on purpose. They argue that the general series modifier is the general way to read. They cite to a treatise called Reading Law by former Justice Antonin Scalia and Professor Brian Garner. What I find interesting is that in that discussion, in that book, Professor Garner and Justice Scalia note that this is a canon that most often, more than most, yields to other canons of interpretation and yields more frequently than most other canons of construction to other contexts. The context of the adoption of both the constitutional text and the statutory text contemporaneously with one another by the same body is significant context to demonstrate that it keeps meaning the same thing. You cannot show me the word general in front of municipal election. It's separated by an or. You cannot show me the word general in front of city election in the statute. It's simply not there. You have to imagine it is there. You have to pretend that it is there. And it is not. And it is not an accident. There was no scrivener's error. It was omitted on purpose.
All right. Let me see if I can simplify this down. Compelling cases on both sides. I don't think we care about bold print. And, you know what I mean? I don't think that that's the issue here as much as is basically, and we the people. I think those are very, very important aspects. But the real question here is when the city clerk was asked when the last election was, she said this date. Then we had another election, and then that became the next election, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So your summation is they went off another whole election that they shouldn't have went off?
Correct.
Okay. I don't think they were directed. They asked a direct question. They got an answer. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'm going to ask the city council right now if they have any questions. Councilman Barone?
Yeah, I do. I'm so sorry. Counsel for the committee. I have a question for him.
Oh.
Okay, please come
and
up.
then maybe you can answer the same question, Council Silva. I made some notes here. Councilor, it's not likely, but is it possible that a municipality can maybe never even have a general election?
Well, I mean, that has not happened. There hasn't been a situation in which a municipality has not had a general election. There is the possibility that a county, that is, forever, there is the possibility that a county could not have for an election cycle a general election. And so those are all possibilities, but everyone recognizes that the Constitution and the statutes say that in the context of county elections, it's the general election.
So for the record, you're saying that it hasn't happened?
I'm saying that the fact that theoretically some municipality could go through a series of election cycles without having a general election because nonpartisan primaries didn't yield one does not change what the Constitution means, because the same argument could be made about a county. And in the case of a county, everyone recognizes that you look to the general election. So the fact that you're looking in the case of North Las Vegas back to 2019 doesn't create an anomaly. That is the last general election that occurred. And there hasn't been an instance of which I'm aware of an initiative in a municipality that has simply never had a general election. So if the question is whether that could theoretically happen, it hasn't. And the Constitution says what it means. You look to the general election.
Okay. I'd like to direct the same question to Council Silva.
Concerning the possibility of a municipality never having a general election, yeah, it can happen. I agree that I'm unaware of a municipality in Nevada that has never had a municipal election, but it could happen. It happened multiple times in a row in Yerington, in Las Vegas. It's happened here in North Las Vegas. Cities are created from time to time. The most recent city is the city of Fernley, born in 2001. They have a can of Pepsi in their lobby that's older than the city itself, as a matter of fact. There are young cities, and there will be more cities in this state. And so it is possible, especially with a new city, that you could come online, have everything resolved in primaries for a couple of cycles, and never get to a general city election. I also note, I disagree with Council's contention, Mr. Moore's contention, that counties might also not have a general election. County elections and state elections have partisan races. They cannot be resolved at the primary election. There will be a general county election. I disagree with his contention.
2015. Now, I remember winning my own election in the primary just recently, and I did the last time as well. 2015, did we have, quote, a general election?
No. 2015, 2003, this city, no general election, just a primary. Everything because every race that was contested was resolved. The final election for the municipality of that cycle was the primary municipal election under the charter, primary city election under the statutory verbiage.
So just so that you understand out there, sometimes you can win your election in the primary election when you get over 50%, and then there's not a general election. So I think that's what we're discussing here.
Yes, okay. And I will note that almost happened in this electoral cycle. Only one race is going.
So is that law actually has counsel for the petitioners then? Has he actually then misstated this law?
So to answer the question, yes. The petitioners committee misapprehends what a primary city election is versus a primary election. You can tell based on their argument that this was a closed partisan primary. It wasn't. It was a primary city election, which can be a terminal election. In a closed partisan primary, you can't end the race there because it is the nominating process of the various political parties. So it doesn't matter if somebody gets more than 50%. That's just a nominating election. It's a primary election. Primary city election means something different. And the Nevada Supreme Court has instructed us that these terms mean something different. Mr. Moore says that I'm arguing that you should adopt an interpretation of the Constitution that's never been adopted before, because I say that you should draw a distinction between a general county election on the one hand and just municipal election on the other hand. Well, I've already told you that the Nevada Supreme Court said, hey, look, a general city election isn't a general election. That's a case. That's published. It's the same argument. It's the same analysis. This is not an unprecedented or novel approach that I'm urging.
As a matter of fact, up until recently, we had our own election cycle where the municipal elections were clearly delineated, and we were not part of the general thing. So, again, if I remember correctly, when we had these were elections that were decided in a primary well before there would have been any summertime general election for that cycle.
Correct. And that has not been altered. We can still terminate the electoral cycle in a primary. It's just the date has moved. I would also like to note one further thing, if I may. One thing that's been overlooked by the Petitioners Committee, sorry, Siri. One thing that's been overlooked by the Petitioners Committee is that the Constitution, we're all talking about Article 19, Section 4, because that's the operative language. And we all agree on that. We just disagree on how you should read it. There's another section right after, and Section 5 says, hey, legislature, these rights, they're self-executing. You have these rights. You absolutely have these rights. But hey, legislature, go pass some statutes to facilitate them. And that's exactly what the same legislative body that adopted this article, that proposed this language, that's exactly what they did. The Nevada Supreme Court in a recent case gave special weight. Not undue weight. When I say special, I don't mean they treated it as more favored than other constitutional provisions, but they afforded specific analysis to that provision of the Constitution in analyzing the statutes that we use to decide how these initiative petitions and how these elections and how recall elections and how all of these matters work. So we have clear precedent from the Nevada Supreme Court, in fact, that it is appropriate to analyze the statutes and the constitutional provisions together. And as I said before, it is not the case that I'm asking you to elevate the statute over the Constitution. I don't believe that this council can engage in statutory nullification. You cannot ignore the law, and the law is codified in the statutes. But we don't have to worry about a tension between the Constitution and the statute because they're harmonious. It says municipal election, it says last preceding city election. That's what they say in the plain and unadorned text.
Council, Counselor, if in fact the petitioners had gathered the signatures, let's say it's even 1,000 signatures, 1,200, 800, turn them in prior to our election.
Yes.
It's a moot point.
Correct. Had they filed earlier, they would have had enough. Mr. Moore is correct. If we used the 2019 election, which we would have until the 2022 election occurred, they would have enough. The necessary threshold would have been 475. They're clearly over that threshold. The problem is that their delay doomed their initiative petition. The committee's delay doomed the initiative petition because there was another election. And so the election that they were attempting to use was no longer the last preceding city election.
I know I'm a high school teacher. I've had my students whose family's been suffering for a long time. It wasn't just like 3 months ago. It's been for a while now.
Yes.
I'm not sure. It's going to be someone from the petitioners who's going to have to answer this, I think. If we've known that this has been an issue for a while, there have been 3 years since passed, or more, I think, since the last general election. Why is it then that it was only the last few months here, when everything with time was of an essence? Why did they wait so long? I know you cannot answer that. Perhaps someone from the petitioners can answer that.
I will yield the dais then so that they can answer your question, because likewise I have no good reason why they could not have gone sooner.
Would someone from the Mayor? I'm sorry. I'm kind of flabbergasted. I'm confused. I would like to, if there's someone from the petitioners who could please answer this question. I know I would really. I think it might shed some light. Yeah. Again, it's been several years since the 2019 election. I know that my students have been telling me about how their families have been having issues, and it hasn't been just the last few months. It's been for a while now. I still have, it's been a while, so I'm wondering if we've known that this has been an issue, then why did the petitioners choose such a close deadline to initiate this petition?
Well, again, we don't believe that the interpretation of the Nevada Constitution that's being put to you is the correct one. And the precedent that outside counsel is citing was not a case that interpreted this provision of the Constitution. It's not a case that said that it's going to be general elections for the county and it's going to be any election for the city. This is an unprecedented position that you are being asked to take. Now, if the question is, why did the committee choose to circulate the petition when it did? That was a political decision. This was the point at which the committee and those who were behind it, backing it, believed that this would be most popular. This is a point at which the committee decided that North Las Vegas needed an ordinance like this. But that's really not the issue. The issue is not the decision that the committee made to circulate the petition when it did. The question is whether this council will adopt a view of the Constitution that's unprecedented and that has the effect in this instance of denying the city's residents the right to vote on this matter, this very important matter. Now, I will note that under the interpretation that's being put forward by the outside counsel here, someone who's proposing an initiative and who's circulated that initiative for some period of time and then has an intervening primary election like the one that happened in June will have about a week to determine whether they have enough signatures. About a week. Now, the outside counsel took issue with the fact that we said that the certification of the primary results wouldn't happen until June 29th, and July 1st was the deadline for submitting signatures, signed petitions. Outside counsel says that it was in fact June 24th. But in either case, this interpretation gives those who wish to submit something to have their fellow citizens vote on it a window that is minuscule in terms of when they know what the sufficient number of signatures is. That is not the case when you read the Nevada Constitution the way it should be read, which is that you look to the last general election. So the timing of the initiative was certainly a political decision. It was a decision about when this measure could receive the most support, when it made sense to put it forward as a policy matter. But the interpretation that you're being asked to adopt is one that would create an unnecessarily and unrealistically small window for those who are proposing initiatives to get it on the ballot. Signed initiative petitions have to be in 130 days before the general election. So if you use the primary election, those who want to get measures on the ballot are in the dark about how many signatures they need until a week before they have to turn in their petitions. That's not a rational result. That's not what the legislature intended. That's certainly not what the Constitution provides.
Thank you, Councilor. Yes, please, if you don't mind, Mayor, if you would like to respond as well. I think the Mayor would probably direct you to come up here, Mr. Papa George.
I'm sorry, Mayor. No, John, for the record, Ted, state your name. And
Ted Papa George, Secretary Treasurer, Culinary Local 226. I appreciate the questionings. And look, this is a serious issue, and we also appreciate the time that has been taken here. Look, we have all been through the last 2.5 years of just incredible difficulty. In the hospitality industry, this is the lifeblood of this city, and this state has been devastated. And, our union has been, our folks completely laid off. We came back within a year or so after the closures at 25%, working 75% laid off through 2020 and 2021. We rose to about 50%. We're still at about 80%. We are at about 20% still not back to work. For us, that's 10,000 workers, 10,000 families not back to work yet. We spend a lot of time, and I think we work with members of this body too, members of the city, council, county, working to protect our members for the last 2.5 years. We've been a little busy doing that. We made a decision to get active in this election because we felt it was the right thing to do, but we're a democratic body, and our members make decisions, and we talk to our members. And this issue of these corporate buy-up of housing, corporate buy-up of apartments, these massive rent increases that you're right isn't just recent, but it's accelerated. All the data shows it's accelerated. And our members have said that we have to do something about that. And so we have made that decision. I just want to say to you, Councilman Barone, and the rest of the council and the mayor, the question really here is about whether we and you are willing to subvert the will of these voters. It can't be done on technicalities, and the entire pretzel logic analysis here that somehow we could not make a decision on even moving forward on this initiative. As your question answers, why would we wait until we actually knew what happened in the primary election, and then we had a very little time to actually even put together the petition and go out and sign up folks is just outlandish, that interpretation. So, look, we think that we made prudent decisions. We think that technicalities should be ignored and the will of the voters should be followed, and we're asking this council to do that today. I really appreciate your questions, and I appreciate you allowing us the time to give complete answers as possible. Thank you.
Councilman Barone, I'd like to.
This isn't a court of law here. I mean, it's not up and back. Let me call you up when I'd like to invite you back up.
Yes,
Would that be
Mr.
okay for a second? 'Cause we might, I'm going to ask
Absolutely.
everybody else stand here if they have questions, and you can attach all those questions together.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not being
Absolutely, sir.
rude, but, you know.
No problem, Mayor.
Councilman Churchill, do you have anything you want to say?
Just when you think you have it kind of worked out in your mind. I'd like to have, if you don't mind, Mayor, Mr. Moore, just kind of come up one more time, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. First of all, in case I missed anything, which I probably did after all of these presentations here, do you have any case law that would substantiate what you're saying, your interpretation of it? Okay. Secondly, are you kind of hanging your hat on the fact that it must be or should be or it's common sense to be the last general election, because to make it the most current primary, there would be a real problem with the upcoming general election to get that ballot initiative on the rolls to go forward? Is that part of your argument?
So our argument does not hinge on that fact. Our argument follows directly from the language of the Constitution. And let me answer your first question first. There is no precedent either way. There is no court case looking at this language in Article 19 and saying, we interpret it the way that outside counsel wants you to interpret it, that it's one rule for counties and a different rule for cities. There's no precedent saying to you that the way that I believe it most naturally reads, which is last preceding general, county, or municipal election, is the right language. And so what do you do in that situation? Do you deny the people their right to vote on a measure based on an unprecedented, unsubstantiated interpretation of language in the Constitution, a way of interpreting that language that does not follow from the normal rules of statutory interpretation and constitutional interpretation? Outside counsel recognizes that Justice Scalia, who wrote a book about how you interpret constitutions and statutes, agrees with us. He agrees that when you've got a list of multiple things separated by and or, and there's an adjective like general at the beginning, it applies to each one of them, unless there is something else in the text of that Constitution that tells you otherwise. And there's nothing. All that there is a statute that was adopted that says last preceding city election. It doesn't say primary election. It doesn't say general election. It doesn't say any election. And so the Constitution is what we are looking to here. And to be frank, given the rights that are involved here, given the fact that your action would deny the voters in this city the right to vote on this measure, the burden that the city clerk should have followed, that outside counsel should be under, is exceptionally high. There should be affirmative reasons for you to deny putting this on the ballot, not a interpretation of the Constitution that is not favored and that has no precedent behind it. So we are asking you, in deciding which interpretation is correct, to properly put the burden on those who would deny the people of the city the right to vote on an initiative. Put the burden on them. Is there precedent that supports their position? No, there isn't. Is the rule of statutory interpretation that applies to the Constitution, to this Article 19, Section 4, does that say what we say it means? Yes, that's the rule that applies. So the burden should be on those who would deny the people their right to vote. And that burden should be quite high. It should not be based on speculation about what some court, using all sorts of logic and reasoning that doesn't have any precedent, that's quite indirect, would say. So that's our main argument. Now, it's true that when we look at what the legislature meant and what the Constitution means, there is something called absurd results, or results that we just don't think were intended. And the legislature said you have to turn in your initiative petitions 130 days before the general election, generally first week of November. If it meant that the primaries, typically held in June, would be the measure for how many signatures you needed, knowing that it takes weeks to certify the results of those primaries, it would have been saying that those who seek to have initiatives placed on the ballot are in the dark about how many signatures they need until a week or maybe as little as 2 days before they had to turn in those petitions. That's an absurd result. That is not something that, when we're talking about the fundamental constitutional right to propose initiatives, that we would expect or assume that the legislature meant to do. So it's not our primary argument, but it certainly is a very strong argument for recognizing that it's the constitutional language that frames what NRS 295 means, not the other way around.
Councilman Black?
Yes, I have a few questions. I have lots of notes here and have been studying this matter. Mr. Moore, you mentioned, sorry that you just sat down. I also have a question for Mr. Bice, or a clarification for some of the things that you said. But what I hear is we have two interpretations and one state statute. And I'm not hearing that either interpretation is, as you said, substantiated or precedented. They're both just two standalone interpretations. But we have the one statute that our city clerk used as the basis to align the calendar when the submissions came in that states 15% or more of the voters who voted in the last preceding city election. The word general is not in the statute, correct?
That statute does not include the word general. It
Correct.
says last
Okay.
preceding city election.
Yeah, so we have two interpretations of the Constitution, one from you and one from Mr. Silva, and one statute that is missing a word. And so I just wanted to state that that's something that is important for me to be able to mull over, is that we do truly have two interpretations, neither one of which sounds like are substantiated in a court. And so I just wanted to verify that.
So that is the case. When I will say two things about that. The first is that the Constitution, of course, is the supreme law. That is what ultimately the City Council and the legislature must act under. And so it's not a matter of counting up constitutional interpretations against statute provisions. It's a matter of what the Constitution means ultimately. Second, the legislative provision, the statute, NRS 295, does not say what type of city election. It does not use the word general. It does not use the word primary. So it also, and it doesn't have a definition of what a city election is. So it does not affirmatively mean a general election or a primary election either. So we are left here with a series of interpretive arguments. We believe that our interpretive arguments are the strongest for the reasons that I've said, and many of those arguments are ones that outside counsel has recognized are the standard, such as Justice Scalia's interpretation of what do you do with language like this. We are in a position where there would be a certainly unintended result if those who wish to propose initiatives had a week or as little as 2 days to know how many signatures they needed. And I think this is the most important thing. There is a question of what we lawyers call the burden. Who does the burden fall on here? Who has to prove their case affirmatively? And I would submit that when you're talking about denying the right for a matter to be voted on, denying a constitutional right, ultimately, to propose and enact initiative measures. The burden falls on those who would oppose that right, who would deny that right. And I leave you with that burden should weigh heavily here. And if you have differing interpretations, even if you don't feel that you're in a position to sort out who's correct, the weight, the burden should be on those who would deny the committee the right to have this initiative, this popular initiative, put on the ballot.
Thank you. Mayor Lee, may I ask Mr. Bice a clarifying question? Mr. Bice, you spent a great deal of time talking about discrepancies between the submitted at the point of the affidavit of submittal and then what was circulated. Can you clarify what you stated relative to whether the law required them to be identical at the petition submittal?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I just wanted you to clarify because you spent a lot of time on that. And
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate it. And it actually kind of ties into the last point that we were just talking about here, because Mr. Moore is arguing that there's these interpretive arguments as though there's sort of two equally competing sides here. And as you'll recall, one of his arguments that he said was, is that all they have to do is file the language. They don't actually have to file the initiative petition, and that's the assertion that was made. Okay, and he's saying that their arguments are as good as your counsel's arguments, and so pretending as though this is somehow a draw, and that you can just disregard the statute. Here's the statute. If I can have this pulled up, because I think it's important that you see it to compare what you heard from Mr. Moore to what the law actually is on this issue. This is 295-205 sub 4. Upon receipt of a petition for initiative or referendum placed on file pursuant to Section 1 of the statute, they actually have to file it. And the arguments he was making about how they didn't have to file that version that they actually submitted with signatures is not true. The statute actually explicitly requires that the initiative be on file. And it requires that the initiative that is on file be the same one that you actually circulate for signatures. And the statute requires that. And that plainly wasn't done here. And you'll notice when they came up, they didn't talk about, was the document changed after they started gathering signatures? That cannot happen under the law. And they are silent on that, and I submit under the law there's a reason that they're silent on that. It's because they know that the document was changed after they had already gathered the signatures. And somebody substituted this new document for the document that they had actually filed with the clerk on May 18th. Not the one that they submitted with signatures on June 30. And those two differences cannot be disregarded. They just cannot be disregarded because the statute doesn't allow it. The statute is explicit on that. And can I make one final point about this burden argument? Because I thought it was very interesting you heard from Mr. Moore. It's ironic because Mr. Moore and I have both argued this issue at the Nevada Supreme Court, and the Nevada Supreme Court has decided it. The burden is upon the party claiming that their noncompliance with the statute should be excused. That is the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority case versus Miller. And ironically, Mr. Moore and I were both counsel on that case, and we were both right because we both argued that the people who submitted the affidavit in that case that was not compliant with the statute bore the burden of proving that their compliance could be excused. Not the other way around, as he was just arguing to you. The burden is clear from the Nevada Supreme Court. It's on the proponents, not us. He argued that position, so did I in that case, and we both prevailed on that issue. So to come into the council and tell you all you should reverse the exact position of the Nevada Supreme Court, that should not stand. And again, and I have a lot of respect for the city council, and I don't remember if the mayor was a member of the LBCBA board at that time that we had that case. It might have been too long ago, Mr. Mayor. But this is not a court. The statute is clear. It says next preceding election. The city council doesn't have the discretion to say, well, we just are going to overrule the legislature. The legislature, cities, and I think the mayor said this, cities are a creature of the legislature. The legislature sets the rules. The city, just like any other citizen, I have to follow them. If I disagree with those rules, I go to court. But I don't get to just disregard them because they're an obstacle to what I did here. And here, no one made them wait until the last minute to submit their signatures. That was a strategic decision that they made, and there just isn't any legal authority that allows the city to just ignore the violation of the statute, which is what their position is.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you very much.
So this is an interesting point of this conversation. I have some blue cards here for some people. I don't think they're as intelligent as the people who spoke to us, but they are able to come up and say something. But everything that was spoken today looks like it's going to be interpreted in court. So if you say something that could hurt your case, you might want to second think that. Both sides have got counsel and have paid money for this decision to be made. So if you come up here and you say something that's contrary to what your team said, it will be used in court against your team. So if you have a question and a concern and a desire to let the city council know how it has affected you, your life, and all this kind of stuff, what the actual issue is about, that's one thing. This has to do just with the sufficiency of what the vote was. Mr. Papa George said that technicalities can be ignored. We can't ignore the technicalities. We're probably not good enough by any chance to interpret the Constitution here. The arguments are compelling. The issue is very tender. So unless there's somebody here who is smarter than these gentlemen that wants to come up and make a statement, then I'll read. I've got 4 names here, but just be careful when you say something. It's going to be in a court of law, and your verbiage is going to be damning or contributing to your cause. Susie Vasquez, do you need to say something, or is your counsel said your point? Okay. Anthony Lambert. John Johnson, did you have anything that's going to be important to this discussion? Okay, so these are the final 2 here, but be very careful what you say. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Anthony Lambert, I'm a resident of North Las Vegas and a homeowner. So the decision, as I understand the council has before it, is to determine if you're going to accept your clerk's decision that the petition was sufficient. Now, it's come down, and as you've repeated, Councilman Black repeated, to an interpretation of the Constitution, more or less, and you have one side and the other. One is going to absolutely put a group of people at risk of a lot of damages, and I'm not going to get into that. As you said, I'm sure you'll hear plenty of it later. But what I want to bring up is that I want to understand why there's a third party who's invited when this should be a decision between city council staff and council. Could you? Yeah, okay. Here. City council staff and city council and the petitioners. There's a whole group of people here who represent your petitioners. Then in the back, there's a row of real estate lawyers who represent the real estate industry. Why is it a real estate lawyer, the man who spoke most recently, coming in for this discussion that should be between the petitioners and the council deciding if their staff made a decision? I'm very confused by that. I would like a little bit of an explanation.
Well,
I'll leave it. I appreciate it.
They are somewhat residents by their businesses here. They have a play in what's going on in this
Mayor,
area.
if I can, it's a public hearing. It's in the public hearing section, so that's why anybody from the public can speak on this matter, so long as it's confined to the subject of the agenda, which is as to the clerk's certification of sufficiency.
Great. So there's a 3-minute rule, as I understand. I want to make sure I abide by that. And also, I understand that council, for the sake of presentation, was provided longer than 3 minutes because of the severity and the seriousness of the discussion, as well as the real estate lobbyists also get that time. And again, I just take great offense to the fact that the council provides these working people are being discouraged from coming up and trying to speak and try to talk to you about the Constitution because they're not lawyers. That's very offensive. To say if you're not smart and not as smart as these people, please do not come up, because it is a public hearing, as you mentioned. And so as residents, they should be able to do that. I believe my time is almost up. I really do hope that you focus on the issue here, that is, did your clerk interpret the Constitution and as it should? If it's up to interpretation, then it is your call to choose between the real estate lobbyists or to choose between the people that are going to put this to a ballot so that the residents can make the decision. It doesn't enact the measure by making your decision today. It puts it to a ballot so the residents can decide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
John, before you speak, I just want to clarify. I believe what the mayor was trying to say earlier is that since this is a public hearing item simply on the certificate of sufficiency, we want to make sure that we're not violating open meeting law by talking outside of the scope of the agenda item. So the mayor was not discouraging anybody from speaking if we're talking about the certificate of sufficiency.
Mr. Johnson.
John Johnson for the record. And yeah, that was very disheartening, Mayor, the comments that you said, because, I'm very smart. I do my investigation and my research. And once again, like the gentleman said, we all get 3 minutes. We understand that the petitioners should have more because they have a presentation. We understand that your team should have more because it's a presentation. But what the people is confused about is how a real estate lawyer was able to come up here and give his own presentation that exceeded the 3-minute rule. I'm missing out on my time to explain this, and I'm not going to get extra time to talk about what I really came up here to talk about. So that's what the optics of what happened. When I first seen it, I called some people that was, are you watching this? Do you really see that they let the attorney, does he represent? No, he don't. That's y'all attorney. So you're absolutely right. It is a public hearing. But we all get 3 minutes. How did he get more than 3 minutes for everybody else that wanted to speak? So I don't want to be the dead horse, but that's what everybody is perplexed about. But my whole thing is, I understand they're talking about the Constitution, but for me, it's not even about the Constitution and what the wording say, because I worked for you guys. I worked for every one of you guys. I put literature on every door for one of y'all campaigns. Councilman Barone, you know me personally. Me and you are best friends. I've worked on your campaign since 2013 when I first met you and we built a relationship. So, yes, their attorney is absolutely right. Your attorney is absolutely right. There is no guarantee that there's going to be a general election. That's why it specifically says a city election. But my question is this. This is the real question. When does that time start? When I turn in my initiative to go get my signatures? Is it the preceding election then? Because I think it was May when they turned in their signatures. So when they started to collect signatures, the preceding election would have been 2019. You see what I'm saying? So what you guys are saying and what the city clerk is saying is that we're not looking at when you started. We're looking at when you finished. And the reason why they waited to July 1st, because the law says they have 150 days or 80 days before the election, which puts it at July 1st. That was their deadline. So what, they didn't have a right to make sure that they exercised their full potential and turned it in? So that's really what the question is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The key word was preceding election. So at this point in time, is there anybody else here in the audience that would like to add to the conversation of the attorneys on both sides?
Hello. And yes, I did turn in my blue card before you asked.
My name is Kabira Johnson. And one word that I haven't heard throughout this time is transparency. You cannot have someone, you guys are a business essentially. And like John Johnson pointed out, when they started, they were within the terms of the 2019 election. So you're telling me I can start with one set of rules, with one finish line to look at, and when I get there, that finish line moves? It extends? It doesn't make sense. And yes, I am intelligent enough to keep my comments strictly to the city clerk's certificate. But I will be back up here because I am passionate about how it affects me and my family as well.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one come up to the front, we're going to close public comment. And yes, that time is available where we will be there to listen to you. So this is a time where we make a motion.
Mayor, can I make a statement?
Yeah, would you like to say it? Ms. Winsbrown? I'm sorry.
So thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of sum up my thoughts after listening to all the presentations and the questions. And I just want to be very clear that I do support rent control. And I do agree that something needs to be done to help the folks that are struggling in our state. Just because of inflation and lack of affordability, it's just not right that so many residents work so hard and you still can't make ends meet. The item today, however, is not about the merits of rent control. The only thing we as a council can consider today is whether this petition meets the legal threshold to be used to advance a rent control initiative. So just as much as it pains me to say the proper process wasn't followed, between May 18th when the affidavit was filed and June 30th when the signatures were filed, another election did take place. That changed the count that is required to proceed, and neither this council nor the clerk has the ability to change those rules established by the legislature some 60 years ago. And I value our Constitution and the democracy of our Constitution. And to me, this is just too critical of an issue to get it wrong because the right processes were not followed. And that's just coming from the heart. That's just how I feel. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Mayor, sorry, the clerk has something she would like to read into the record. There's also some additional staff comments.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I just wanted to bring to your attention, sir, that the city clerk's office received only 28 public comments in opposition of the city clerk's determination of insufficiency, and we received, the city clerk's office received 105 public comments in support of the determination of insufficiency.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Mayor, and if I could ask Steve to come back up and answer the last speaker's question about the start and the finish. I think he can answer that question.
Thank you. A question was asked of this council why the June 30th date is the one that matters, and that's because that's when the petition was filed. The statute breaks this into several processes. The first is filing the affidavit, but that is not the same as filing the petition. It is the petition that sets the time for review. I note that there was another affidavit that was filed and submitted with a petition that went nowhere. At the time that an affidavit is filed, the clerk cannot determine whether or when a related petition will actually be submitted. And so the terminal date, the date that the petition is filed, is the relevant date. They have up until 130 days before the election to file. They could have filed before the primary election. They did not do so. They still have all the time in the world to begin the proceedings again, but for this cycle, their delay caused an intervening election, and that is the date that we use. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point in time, I'm going to offer up a motion. I am going to follow the city charter. That's all I'm able to accomplish. I can't interpret state law, and I do believe this needs to be somewhat adjudicated for the sake of these people out in this audience and for the, as you said, the realtors and all those people, so you guys will have a better place to air your grievances out. So I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the city clerk's certificate as to sufficiency. That will be my motion. Please cast your vote. Items passed. We are standing by our city clerk's verbiage understanding. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on.
Item number 19, VAC-08-2022 for applicant D.R. Horton to vacate a portion of the existing public drainage easement located near Golden Buckwheat Drive in conjunction with development of the property. For possible action, recommendation approved.
You have to state your name for the record again.
Jason Deneen with Horrocks Engineers representing the applicant D.R. Horton.
Okay, so you've already given your presentation, so this is just a follow-up. So this is a public hearing. Anybody who would like to discuss item 19, please come forward. Do we have any blue cards for that? No, we don't. So we're going to close the public hearing and call for a motion to approve.
Mayor, I'll be happy to go ahead and approve item number 19, VAC-08-2022.
Miss Jackie, we're not getting any response. There it is right there. Items approved.
Thank you very much.
You? Oh, okay. All right. Item number 20.
Item number 20, VAC-09-2022 for Speedway 11 for applicant Prologis to vacate the entire 60-foot unnamed public right-of-way between Fisher Avenue and Washburn Road in conjunction with the development of the property. For possible action, recommendation approved.
Thank you. Are you Mr. Johnson?
Correct.
Welcome, Mr. Jeremiah Johnson.
Yes, Jeremiah Johnson with Danny Engineering, 6030 South Jones Boulevard, here on behalf of the applicant. And my apologies, I actually left my documents at the house, or at the office, and but this is just the vacation of a 60-foot right-of-way between Fisher and Washburn. We're combining a 10-foot parcel to the west with two 2.5-foot parcels to the east. The existing unnamed right-of-way has been vacated north and south of the development, of the proposed development, and so we don't see any impediment upon the public connection, and drainage will be routed along Fisher Road as it has historically ran.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open a public hearing real quick. Is there anybody here that would like to discuss with City Council item number 20? Seeing no one coming forth, we'll close the public hearing. The chair will call for a motion. Councilman Barone?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Have a motion. Please cast your vote. Items are approved.
Thank you.
Item number 21, VAC-11-2022, the Villages of Tule Springs for applicant D.R. Horton to vacate two public utility easements, 124-16-711-001 and 002, generally located along Tule Springs Parkway. For possible action, recommendation approved.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Jeffrey Armstrong.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Jeffrey Armstrong, 2727 South Rainbow, here representing the applicant. We concur with staff recommendations and respectfully request your approval. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Let me go to public hearing real quick. Is there anybody here that would like to discuss item number 21 with the council? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Councilman Churchill.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, Tule Springs. I'll be happy to go ahead and approve BAC-11-2022.
Thank you. We have a motion. Please cast your vote. Items are approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Moving on to business. Go ahead.
Sorry, item number 22, set future public hearing dates.
Madam City Clerk, I so direct you to set any hearing dates as necessary.
Mayor, so noted.
Item number 23. Go ahead, sorry.
Item number 23, status check regarding statement of financial impact of proposed neighborhood stability ordinance for possible action. Mayor and Council, on Wednesday, July 6th, we presented to the city's fiscal impact statement to the council. At that meeting, if you recall, the representatives for Culinary Union requested that the council delay the action for the fiscal impact statement. They stated on the record at that time that they needed some more time to study the effects of their petition. At that meeting, council granted their request and asked for staff to work with Culinary on that, and no action was taken at that time. Following the meeting, I had a discussion with the Culinary on July 11th, where it was indicated that they would have it, they just need a couple weeks to get it together. I spoke today with Paul from the Culinary Union. He said that, in fact, he has it. He will transmit it to me this evening or sometime in the next few days. Meanwhile, that being said, the city has received statements from other stakeholders regarding the fiscal impact of rent controls. The Las Vegas Realtor submitted a statement that estimates the proposed ordinance could lower assessed valuations in the city by as much as $2.1 billion, which is more than what we estimated. Similarly, the Nevada State Association, a state apartment association, referenced a study that showed rent controls lowering property values by an average of 16% over a 10-year period. Clearly, these are concerning studies to staff. We cited what we felt was a strong longitudinal study that was put together over time by the Brookings Institute that showed a decrease in property values. And why that matters to us is because then that decreases the revenues that the city can collect. And as any decision that's made by this body, there's consequences to it. So we were required by law to provide a fiscal impact on the effect of this ordinance, taking into account what we've received from these other organizations, as well as what I receive, or what we will receive, what staff will receive from Culinary when we receive that. We suggest that we bring that back at the next meeting. We have not forgotten about our affirmative duty to provide the impact statement regarding the effect of the petition. In fact, several times over the last few weeks, in fact, in a conversation on the 25th, your colleague, Councilman Black, asked Culinary about where they were with their petition. So we have been working with them, and I understand that they've been working on putting this together. And this is important because it's important for the community to understand that the fiscal impact of this ordinance would result in a decreased revenues to the city. And if there is a decrease in general fund dollars, then there will be a decrease in police services, fire services, and other types of services. It's the reality of this. So we hope to get that information from Culinary and put that together at the next meeting, assuming we'll see how things progress. But when I mean progress is obviously with the action the council took on the previous item. This item could be moot, but we have continued at the city. Staff has continued to do our affirmative duty under the law to make sure that the petitioners are not disenfranchised in any way.
So just for me to realize, we put an impact statement together, and then who were the other two organizations one more time? The Realtors?
Correct. The Las Vegas Realtors submitted one, as well as the Nevada State Apartment Association.
Okay, and so we're waiting for the Culinary one to come.
Correct.
And will it be today?
When I spoke with them, they will. I believe Paul will be able to give it to me in the next few days.
Young lady, are you here with you, Miss Serena Kasama? Is that? Okay. Does the Culinary Union, Ted, have a financial impact statement today? Can you come up so we can get this on? We have to talk, Paul. You know what I mean? So you asked for some more time, and you got time. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an update?
Yes, I have the statement in front of me. I can read it into the record now, or I can send it in to the council later.
Say that again?
I have the statement in front of me. I can read it into the record now, or I can send it into the city.
Right now would be perfect.
Okay. So, based on our research, the Culinary Union has determined that the Neighborhood Stability Initiative is revenue neutral. The continued growth of the city of North Las Vegas is built on the foundation of an abundance of opportunities. Neighborhood stabilization would only add to the city's sustainable development strategy. The city has touted its affordability in trying to attract a diverse economic workforce. Managing housing costs would fit in with this overall economic development strategy. Affordable and stable housing will incentivize more employers to relocate, and greater disposable income in the pockets of residents will boost local small businesses. Research on the impact of rent regulation has tended to rely more on models than on case studies or observed impacts. While variation across municipalities with rent control policies indicate that local context and local regulations matter. For example, while it might have been the case that property value was kept low when Cambridge, Massachusetts had a rent regulation ordinance between 1970 and 1995, it would be simplistic to claim the proposed neighborhood stabilization ordinance would have the same impact in North Las Vegas. It is impossible to make a direct connection between property value and local rent regulation in Cambridge without taking into account other factors. Cambridge's 5% population decline from 1970 to 1990 might have had an impact on local property value. In contrast, the population of North Las Vegas more than doubled from 2000 to 2020 and is projected to grow at a fast pace. Such robust growth is likely to continue to attract investments and uplift property values. What the proposed ordinance would do is to protect local residents and neighborhoods from the destabilizing impact of price gouging in the rental market. While the city has not deployed resources for an in-depth analysis, more recent academic research addresses the potential relationship between rent regulation and new housing development. Sophisticated modeling in a 2021 study for Minneapolis concluded that average annual rental returns at the middle of the Minneapolis market would not have been constrained by any of the rent increase caps we modeled. The same research report concludes that rent regulation does not lead to reduced development activities, as developers and owners can continue to make reasonable profits. Little empirical evidence shows that rent control policies negatively impact new construction. Construction is more dependent on, and I have a number of studies cited in the paper that I'll submit to y'all. Construction is more dependent on localized economic cycles and other factors, especially in moderate programs that allow for various exemptions. Additionally, most jurisdictions with rent stabilization specifically exclude new construction from controls, either in perpetuity or for a set period of time. We note that the proposed neighborhood stabilization ordinance does provide for exemption of new construction. Any potential impact of rent regulation on the property value of rental units is likely to be offset in the continued economic expansion and population growth of the city, whose relatively low cost of living should continue to attract large employers to create jobs in the city, attract inbound migration for jobs and affordable housing, and benefit local businesses where residents can spend more disposable income instead of making higher and higher rental payments to corporate landlords. Based on a large-scale analysis of property transactions by the Washington Post, 17% of homes in North Las Vegas were purchased by corporate investors in 2021. This means a potentially large extraction of local income to corporate landlords. In January 2022, average rent in North Las Vegas increased 24% from a year ago. Based on current trends, at least $270 million of multifamily rental profits go to out-of-state owners this year. If regulation could cap the potential outflow of local income to corporate investors in the forms of escalating rent payments, there would be significant disposable income for local residents to spend at local businesses. Such increased local spending would contribute to a growth in the sales tax receipts, which would benefit the city's overall budget. And I'll submit this full document to the city clerk following the meeting.
So basically, it's revenue neutral and growth will pay for it.
Yes.
Is what you're saying. Ryan, I'm going to ask Will to come up just for a second. Will, could you come up for a second and give us an idea of where there might be a deficiency where growth won't pay for it? Because it was your recommendation that there would be an expense to the city, correct?
Yes, I helped draft and prepare the fiscal impact statement they submitted at the last meeting. And yes, I do believe there will be a fiscal impact to this ordinance. It's only going to be as impactful as the rent control is. As you limit the income of an income-generating property, the value of that property goes down. And since this ordinance would only cap it and never have a true-up mechanism, I agree with the statements that trying to compare what's going on in Massachusetts to North Las Vegas is somewhat problematic, but that's true with every single study nationwide. I mean, every study that's been done on this nationwide has shown that there's a large, significant, call it what you will, fiscal impact. And any study that's used as a comparison, and I put that in the fiscal impact, if we use the same numbers that were used in the Brookings study, that was the estimate that I put together. I understand that there are other studies with bigger numbers. We would try to be as transparent and as straightforward as possible. Does that answer your question?
No, yeah, it does. I've got two more people that want to come up and speak on this, but I wanted to get your, what you just did, what you said there. Mr. Gronauer, you've got a blue card here. Would you like to come up and speak for a second? And then behind her, I have Ms. Kasama, if you'd be next, okay?
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. My name is Bob Gronauer, 1980 Festival Plaza Drive. I'm here tonight specifically representing Pasern Development and Kalita. Those are two multifamily developers that have assets in North Las Vegas, and specifically Kalita currently has over $100 million that is coming through the pipeline planned for the city of North Las Vegas for apartments. I do have other multifamily builders our firm does represent. We probably represent over a dozen multifamily developers in southern Nevada. I only picked out those two developers for Pasern and Kalita for tonight's conversation is because those who have active assets and are looking to continue to build in North Las Vegas, subject to what happens with this rent control discussion. The issue that hasn't been spoken about tonight with respect to rent control is the supply-demand discussion. Currently, as you may know, there's a housing crisis throughout the country itself. If you look at and read into ULI, Wall Street Journal, any of those credible publications, they will tell you there's a housing shortage for single-family homes, about 2.5 million homes that are short. We're about 500,000 multifamily units short in the country. But in different parts of the country, in different cities, the issue is bigger or smaller depending where you are. The issue in Ohio, in a small town in Ohio, isn't as significant as we are here in southern Nevada. It's a bigger issue here. We do have a housing issue. And it comes down to supply and demand. As I mentioned, is we cannot get product out to the market quick enough. There are issues that happen. The issues that are when you come with multifamily projects, not just in the city of North Las Vegas, you get a ton of opposition. Nobody wants multifamily. You have to find specific locations. In doing so, it takes time to get that product out there. In fact, rent control, what I can tell you from speaking to my clients, our clients are leaving California. California doesn't get a lot of multifamily built. They have some of the highest rental prices in the country. New York is the same way too. When you go to the state of New York and California, I pick those two out because they're big and they're known for rent control. What happens in those rent control cities, just as in St. Paul and Minneapolis, which is just a recent article that's been out there, development stops for multifamily. So the idea that I have here, actually, instead of going through all these ordinances and so on, and this is what my client Kalita mentioned, is we should just be directed to have the culinary union or specific industries come to work with the multifamily development industry to figure out ways how we get more product out there. Because all of you are smart up on the dais and the people behind me. We've learned something in business, supply and demand. If we could get the supply out into the market, that's more than the demand that's being asked out there, we're going to be able to control and rents will be able to go down. That being said, the fiscal impact of what you're going to look at here is if the city approves some form of rent control in the next year in the near future, Kalita is going to be pulling out. Their hundreds of millions of dollars of investment will not happen. You will have virtually zero multifamily development in the city of North Las Vegas, which will now create the problem where there will be such a high demand that the increase in rent will go up even further because of the demand that's there without putting the product out to the market. So to sum it up, without any incentives here and putting rent control on, you're not going to get any investments coming into the city of North Las Vegas for multifamily. It'll happen in other jurisdictions where they're going to be more favorable to allow that supply to get out to the market. That being said, I could have any other questions, but I do appreciate your staff has contacted us because they're aware that we represent several developers in multifamily to put something on the record here, pro or for. As I'm mentioning to you, you will definitely not have multifamily development from our firm representing up on this dais if you do put rent control in place. And I think that's the bigger issue. The best way to solve this, in conclusion, is to have us sit down and figure out ways we could come to the city to get more product out there so we could get the rents to be more stabilized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Serena, were you going to come up or? You have to state your name for the record.
Good evening. I submitted a blue card. Susie Vasquez, the Executive Director of the Nevada State Apartment Association. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Nevada State Apartment Association represents nearly 60% of all multifamily housing in the city of North Las Vegas, which amounts to 29 apartment communities or 7,815 units. Addressing the fiscal impact, the Culinary Union told Council back on July 6th that the citizens of North Las Vegas deserved a clear report on the financial impact of the ordinance. We agree, but this begs the question, how could the union collect signatures on an ordinance when by their own admission they do not yet know the financial impact? Part of the union's burden is to explain to voters the effect of the ordinance so that they can make an informed decision. In addition to the defects correctly identified by your clerk, these signatures are premature. How could the residents of the North Las Vegas possibly know what they were signing when the financial toll of this policy is unknown? The Apartment Association has yet to encounter a study that actually states that any rent control creates a rent-neutral outcome. The Nevada State Apartment Association also submitted a document to the city's finance department outlining 3 recent studies revealing the devastating financial consequences rent control has caused in other markets. I will highlight one. A USC Marshall School of Business study released this May found that rent control policy caused a 6 to 7% decline in property values after its enactment in St. Paul, Minnesota. This amounted to an aggregate loss of $1.6 billion. The study is titled Robbing Peter to Pay Paul, the redistribution of wealth caused by rent control, which ties directly to the summary of its policy findings. That while rent control is intended to transfer wealth from higher income households to lower ones, the true impact of the law was